Here are the top 25 fishing movies of all time. Number 25, The River Why. A fly fishing prodigy abandons his family for a solitary life in the wilderness and begins a search of self-discovery and love. Starring William Hurt, Amber Heard, and Zach Gilford. Based on a novel about trout fishing. Amber Heard also appears in the Aquaman movies. Not about fishing, but much of the story takes place underwater. Number 24, Alamo Bay. A Vietnam veteran is pushed to the edge when his livelihood is threatened by immigrants moving into his fishing town. Starring Amy Madigan and Ed Harris. This is a fictional drama inspired by real events that took place on the Gulf Coast in the early 1980s. Number 23, Diggers. A group of clam diggers try to preserve their small-town way of life as they cope with the changing times in their careers and personal lives. Starring Paul Rudd. Clams aren't fish, but I'm counting clam digging as fishing. Here are some other independent movies that didn't quite make the list. Number 22, Grumpier Old Men. Fishing buddies resolve to save their beloved bait shop from a woman that plans to turn it into an Italian restaurant. The sequel to Grumpy Old Men is one of 10 movies that paired Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. Number 21, Man's Favorite Sport. A renowned fishing expert that has never actually fished in his life crosses paths with an annoying girl who signs him up for an annual fishing tournament. A 1964 movie starring Rock Hudson and Paula Prentice. Here are two other older movies that didn't quite make the list. Number 20, Gone Fishin'. Two lifelong fishing buddies get into trouble while trying to overcome a series of obstacles after their boat is stolen. Starring Joe Pesci and Danny Glover. This movie was written by J.J. Abrams. Here are two more movies that appear on other lists but didn't quite make my top 25. Number 19, Blue Miracle. To save an orphanage, a guardian and his kids partner with a washed-up boat captain for a chance to win a lucrative fishing competition. Based on a true story, although Dennis Quaid's boat captain character was fictional and invented for the film. Number 18, In the Heart of the Sea. In the winter of 1820, a New England whaling ship is assaulted by a giant whale with an almost human sense of vengeance. Starring Chris Hemsworth. Based on a true experience that later inspired the great novel Moby Dick. This was directed by Ron Howard. Number 17, Waterworld. In a future where the polar ice caps have melted, a mutant mariner reluctantly helps a woman and a young girl try to find dry land. Starring Kevin Costner and Dennis Hopper. The movie includes a scene where Kevin Costner uses himself as bait to catch a giant fish. Number 16, The Beach. On vacation in Thailand, a man gets possession of a strange map to a rumored solitary beach paradise, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. This movie contains a great spearfishing scene with dangerous sharks. Number 15, Deep Blue Sea. Scientists in an underwater research facility must fight for their lives when a huge storm frees some dangerous genetically altered sharks, starring Thomas Jane and Samuel L. Jackson. Also starring LL Cool J, who performs the song Deepest Bluest Shark's Fin over the end credits of the movie. The first in a trilogy. None of the main actors returned for these direct-to-video sequels. Number 14, Moby Dick. Desperate for revenge, a whaling ship captain endangers the lives of his crew over his self-destructive obsession to hunt Moby Dick. Starring Gregory Peck. Based on the novel by Herman Melville and directed by John Huston. Another version of Moby Dick starring Patrick Stewart as Captain Ahab, who played Captain Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation, reminding me of another fishing movie, Star Trek IV The Voyage Home, where Captain Kirk goes back in time to Earth to find whales to communicate with aliens. Number 13, Ondine. An Irish fisherman catches a beautiful woman in his net and believes that she might be a magical mermaid. Starring Colin Farrell. They actually use the Irish word selkie in the movie rather than mermaid. Number 12, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. A ship sent to investigate a wave of mysterious sinkings encounters an advanced submarine, the Nautilus, starring Kirk Douglas. A league is considered 3 nautical miles at sea. Therefore, they would have traveled 68,350 miles, enough to circle the Earth 2.5 times. Number 11, Coda. When a family's fishing business is threatened, a young woman finds herself torn between pursuing her love of music and the fear of abandoning her parents. Starring Amelia Jones. The title Coda refers to child of deaf adults. The young woman is the only hearing person in her deaf family. Her parents are played by deaf actors Marlee Matlin and Troy Kotsur. Here are 2 highly rated movies that didn't make the list, although they do have great fishing scenes. Number 10, Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. A fisheries expert is hired to fulfill a wealthy sheik's vision of bringing the sport of fly fishing to a desert in the Middle East. Starring Ewan McGregor and Emily Blunt. Ewan McGregor co-stars on 2 different movies on the list. The second hasn't been revealed yet, but it's in the top 5. Number 9, On Golden Pond. When their estranged daughter arrives at Golden Pond for the summer, a family is forced to renew the bonds of love and overcome friction that has existed for years. Starring Katharine Hepburn, Henry Fonda, and Jane Fonda. This is the only film that father and daughter Henry and Jane Fonda made together. Number 8. Grumpy Old Men. A lifelong feud between two neighbors erupts when a new female neighbor moves in across the street. After the success of Grumpy Old Men, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau went on to star in 3 more movies, including the sequel Grumpier Old Men, Out to Sea, and The Odd Couple 2. Number 7. The Old Man and the Sea. After 3 months of catching nothing, an aging fisherman hooks a fish that drags him out to sea as he tries to reel it in, starring Spencer Tracy, based on the short novel by Ernest Hemingway. Another version was released in 1990 starring Anthony Quinn. Number 6. The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. A renowned oceanographer plans to exact revenge on a mythical jaguar shark that devoured his former partner, starring Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, and Cate Blanchett. The red woolen caps worn by the characters are a reference to famed oceanographer Jacques Cousteau, directed by Wes Anderson. Number 5. Big Fish. While visiting his dying father, a journalist starts to investigate the truth behind his father's exaggerated storytelling and finally begins to understand the man. Starring Ewan McGregor and Albert Finney. Not entirely about fishing, but there is some fishing, including a story about how he caught an uncatchable fish utilizing his wedding ring as bait. Directed by Tim Burton. Number 4. Castaway. When a plane crashes at sea during a terrible storm, the only survivor washes up on a tiny island where he must learn to survive. Production was halted for a year so Tom Hanks could lose 50 pounds and grow out his hair to show the passage of time. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who also directed another Tom Hanks movie, Forrest Gump. Although it didn't make the top 25, there are some great shrimping scenes. Number 3. The Perfect Storm. An unusually intense confluence of storms catches some commercial fishermen unaware and puts them in mortal danger. Starring George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. Based on a true story about a sword fishing boat caught in one of the fiercest storms in modern history. Number 2. Jaws. When a great white shark terrorizes a New England beach community, the police chief, an oceanographer, and a grizzled boat captain seek to destroy the bloodthirsty beast. Starring Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss. Directed by Steven Spielberg, Jaws is considered the first summer blockbuster of all time. There are sequels, but they're not as highly rated as the original, and they were not directed by Steven Spielberg. And before we get to number 1, please subscribe for more videos like this, or leave a comment if I missed something important. Number 1. A River Runs Through It. The love of fly fishing keeps a family together, despite varying life circumstances of 2 very different brothers. Starring Craig Sheffer and Brad Pitt. Based on a novel and true story about 2 brothers in 1920s rural Montana. Directed by Robert Redford. Thanks for watching. Streaming services change often. You can check justwatch.com to find out where any movie is currently streaming.